Hi everyone, Autumn here, back with another arts interview. Today I'm interviewing a huge inspiration to me in my arts advocation journey, as well as a national speed painter. Let's get started. Go ahead and introduce yourself for me.
Hi, my name is Annika Wooten, and I am based in Wichita, Kansas, and I am a speed painter.
Yes, an art form that not all can master, and I'm really excited to get the details on how you got into that today. But first, I want to know what got you into the arts to begin with? Give me your origin story. What's the lore?
Oh, I love that. What's the lore? I have been an artist ever since I could hold a crayon. My mom is a graphic designer, and then my dad's mom is a fine arts painter. My whole family is very musically talented. And so I really, ever since I could hold a crayon and mess around with paint, like that's been my thing, my identity. And I remember, every year in my yearbook, it said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And it was always an artist. And I never expected what I do now to actually be what it turned out to be. But I think creativity runs through my blood, and I love it.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm curious, understanding that creativity is kind of a family trait within your line. And I want to know, what do your parents do professionally? Did you have an example of that being a sustainable career, especially when so many today and for so long have said, no, that could never be sustainable?
I am very fortunate that my parents laid a really great blueprint for me. My mom is a graphic designer professionally. She's kind of always freelance, but then has also had full-time traditional jobs as a designer.
Sure.
My parents actually met at Hallmark cards, like incorporated. So my dad was in like the business side of things, the suits, and my mom was on the creative side of things. And that is like the perfect explanation of who I am. Then my dad went on to be an entrepreneur. He started multiple of his own businesses. So like my dad is a creative businessman, my mom is a business-minded creative, and I am like the perfect blend of both.
That's amazing. You really did have the ideal examples. And I know you had mentioned previously that your mom was a graphic designer. I think that's really amazing. And also, what a sweet love story. I just think that's really cute. Out of all things, Hallmark, perfect.
Right.
No, absolutely. Okay. Well, I want to be able to jump into a deeper dive of painting and that visual art form. But did you ever have a moment within your life where you wanted to understand, what do I mean when I say artist? What kind of artist do I want to be? Was there ever any kind of exploration into different kinds of art forms in order to get where you landed?
Oh, there was so much exploration. I think one of the first pivotal points was when I was deciding where I was going to go to high school. Where I grew up, there were different magnet high schools, and there was one for creative arts. But within that, when you applied for your line, I guess. Like I applied for both the visual arts school and the theater school, both things I was really interested in. And I got accepted to both, but that would mean choosing one. And I wasn't ready as a freshman in high school to choose like what path I was going to be in and like really immerse myself into for 4 years. And so I opted not to go to the magnet school to allow myself to still have the breadth of music and visual arts and theater, and not have quite as much of a focus in one of them. And I think that that's kind of where I stayed until midway through college. I just kind of was a grab bag of all of these different things because I wanted to do it all. And then about midway through college, I niched into illustration. So that's actually what I have my degree in. Um, but even then, like that's not exactly what I do now. What I do now doesn't really come in a degree package. But I think that allowing myself to have the breadth has really played a role in what I do today because it does bring in so many different facets of those different pathways.
I completely agree. I also kind of relate. So it's really inspiring to hear that you had an experience like that within where I have grown up in Midwest City, Oklahoma. Um, Whenever it was time to go into middle school, that was kind of my deciding factor of do I want to be an artist or does this matter to me? Because the school that I was about to be filtered into, their drama teacher quit and they weren't going to replace her. And theater has always been a huge bread and butter for me. And so I had a similar kind of experience in terms of having to kind of choose pretty early on. And then, of course, you get into like the explore programs where it's like you can either do band or you can do drama. Which one do you want, you know? So I relate.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about your side quest of theater and what that was for you and what you enjoyed about it, how you kind of got into that, and then we'll end up getting back on the path of the long term.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I say I grew up in the theater.
Mhm.
I was in a youth theater from, I think, ages 8 to 18,
Okay.
basically. And of course, we all dream of being center stage and getting the lead role. And time after time, I mean, my first audition for like a legit play was probably 9 or 10 years old, and it was for Annie. And as the 9 or 10 year old little redhead, I
Mhm.
did not get cast as Annie. And then at 12 years old, I was in Charlie Brown, and I did not get cast as the little redheaded girl. And then we did The Little Mermaid. I wasn't quite old enough to be Ariel, but in that production, she had a little sister. I was not cast as Bubbles.
Uh,
And so I'm like, okay, something's not jiving here. But I was still really loving being in the theater. And I was surrounded with lots of talented people who absolutely deserved those roles. But at some point, I was in a show and then also started kind of mentoring within, or I was being mentored in the costume, hair, makeup department.
okay.
And so I ended up shifting from being more on stage to being more backstage. And that's where I think I really felt like my skill set was put to use in a way that made sense.
Yeah.
And so when I was in high school, I did a lot of set design, lighting design, hair and makeup, like running the backstage areas. Um, and really loved being some of the glue that held the pieces together, learning more of how everything functioned, rather than being the person center stage. And again, like I look back at the different stages of my life and I'm like, well, now I do get to be center stage, but so much of what I learned producing plays and musicals leads to the kind of performances that I do today and the work that goes in beforehand.
It all just filters in on itself. It really does. They all pour into the same bucket.
Mm.
You just don't know the substance you're going to get at the
Exactly.
end. See, that's
That's right.
beautiful. So you had
Yeah.
this love within the theater, um, a love, but a different kind of click, and that's fine. And then this degree of illustration. What led you to, of all things, speed painting? How do you get into that? How did you discover, oh, this is something I want to do? What did that look like?
So that was also spawned within the theater world.
Okay.
In high school, I had two incredible mentors, Keith and Kenji, and we had a high school we had a school-wide assembly twice a week, every week.
Yeah.
And there was one coming up that was focused on Black History Month, like the culture of New Orleans jazz music.
Mhm.
And they said, "Have you ever considered painting live on stage?" And I said, "No, but that sounds fun. Let's do it." There was actually supposed to be another girl who painted live with me, and she backed out at the last second. And so I painted live for the first time solo. I didn't practice and it didn't suck. And so that first time painting in front of all of my peers was certainly thrilling. Kind of that blend that I've been talking about between visual arts and theater.
Mhm.
And it just planted this little seed that would eventually spark the career that I have now.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like one, two, skip a few. A couple years later, I was in the pageant world. And for anyone who knows the Miss America organization, your time limit for talent is 90 seconds. And I had always been craving a way to showcase my art on stage, but holding a portfolio and flipping pages just wasn't doing it. And so I thought back to if I can paint in 8 minutes with no practice and it turn out decent, why can't I paint in 90 seconds if I put some effort into it? And so that's where the true speed part came in, and
Mhm.
everything else is taken off from there.
Cutting the time more than in half.
That's right.
And just saying why not is beautiful and inspiring. And I'm so proud of you for doing that. You've sparked a revolution, I think, within like the talent realm of pageantry. Because so many, a handful of people I know within the pageant realm who are like, I want to do talent. I love visual arts. I don't know how to dance and I cannot sing or I will not sing in front of all those people. Let's take it up. It boggles my brain. It really does. How how do you prepare for that kind of thing? What's the most challenging part of it? And how do you kind of master that craft?
I would say 75 to 80% of the speed painting success happens before you ever start painting on the canvas.
Okay.
It is preparation of the image, what is actually going to work in a speed painting style. It
Mhm.
is practicing before you hit the stage. It's selecting music, attire, performance aspects. For me and the way that I perform, there really is an entire show package that goes into that moment on stage. And so when people see a speed painter on stage, like one of the biggest pieces of critique that I've gotten time after time after time, especially in pageantry, is, oh, they've traced it on the canvas, they're just filling in shapes. Like anyone can do that. I would love to see you try, right? And to know that it's an artistic experience, an artistic expression. Yes, you see part of it in 90 seconds, but part of the talent happens before we get there. And any other artist is typically tracing, painting, redrawing, drawing again. I mean, it is part of the art.
Yeah.
Even if we have lines on the canvas, if we don't, everyone does it a little bit differently. Um, but truly, the process of creating the painting happens weeks and months before often the competition, especially when you're doing it in 90 seconds. There's a lot of editing down to get to that point.
How many, because you express obviously practice. Does that look like timing yourself? Does that look like trying different shapes? How many resources are you going through in order to get there? All of these are bubbling around in my mind. Would you be able to lay that out a little more?
Yes. I'll speak to one painting in particular so that we can kind of niche down, the experience.
Sure.
Um, I was Miss Kansas 2019 and 2020, COVID Queen. But when I was preparing to paint at Miss America, so that was a 90-second portrait, I chose to do Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I had also built this like poem and music track that went along with it. But no matter what track I use, especially for a 90-second piece, I know exactly where I need to be at which point in the music to, finish on time. And so, especially in these shorter time frames, the painting is almost choreographed to an extent. And with some of the performance aspects, it really is choreographed. So there's dance in there as well. But when I start preparing the image and the painting, first I'm figuring out what looks good in black and white or a couple colors for that time frame. The first few versions of Ruth kind of looked like a potato, I'm not gonna lie. And so it's editing shapes, it's figuring out, do I need to have both of her ears for you to know that it is Ruth? What pieces of the face or the shapes or the imagery needs to be on a canvas in order to convey, or what can we take away to save seconds sometimes in these kinds of performances. There's a couple different ways that I've practiced over the years. One, I would paint my canvases in chalkboard paint and paint with water. And so that was truly just to get the muscle memory and the timing, but still have something to dip my brushes into.
Yeah.
I've painted, still to this day, I'll wrap my canvases just in butcher paper and then I'll paint it, I'll rip it off, I'll wrap it again, and I'll do another one. And then there really is something to be said to just paint on canvas texture. Your brushes and the paint moves differently. And so a lot of my canvases paint, wait for it to dry, paint it over, wait for it to dry. A little bit more of a time consuming and resource consuming process, but I think that's something else, especially in pageantry, that folks don't realize is that these are non-renewable resources. We can't just press the track and go again. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it and resources that we're using to get ready for that moment.
Yeah, it's not really as simple as the music cuts out and you can just stop. That's wild. That's wild to think about in that kind of stage format. And I know that since Miss America and since all of that, you have been doing other events. Will you explain the kind of events that you've been doing these murals, these mini murals for?
Oh, I love that. Mini murals. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, my standard canvas, I paint on a 4 by 5 foot canvas. It really feels
Crazy.
larger than life sometimes when I flip that thing in the air. But I travel the country. So now I'm a professional. I mean, I was professional back then, but like really now I'm a professional speed painter. I like this month I'll be in 7 different states doing 10 different paintings. And that is crazy to me. Like if you had
Congratulations.
told, thank you.
You're
If you
welcome.
had told little Annika that, she would have never imagined that travel, arts, theater, community, like all of these things are intertwined.
Yeah.
And I paint anywhere from a halftime show on a basketball court with screaming fans to this weekend, I was at a travel conference with travel bloggers surrounding me. I turned around and truly felt like I had a paparazzi moment. To fundraisers, corporate brand activations. I mean, kind of anything you can think of that's looking for unique entertainment, I can plug into. And I've had some really interesting ones lately that have been uh, things that push me out of my creative box and cause me to stretch myself, which I really enjoyed. But seeing the different ways that you can bring speed painting or live performance art into stages across the country has been one of the most rewarding parts of my career.
That's really amazing. I do need to know the details of what elements have stretched you out of your box. I, I was reeled in and now I need to know. And I also want to know
Yeah.
what's the craziest, I guess maybe mishap, but also just event that's occurred while speed painting, where you've been speed painting?
Oh man, there's a few that come to mind. Well, there was one in particular where I was supposed to be painting in the middle of a football field with a marching band.
Oh,
And it was already going to be a challenge for me to keep my time because I didn't actually know the music that the marching band was playing.
oh,
I knew it was going to be about 6 minutes. And so I just kind of had to keep my mental time, had no rehearsal. We're just going to go in the field. But on the day of, it's freezing rain. And the marching band got off the hook. I did not. And so instead of painting in center field with a marching band with music that I didn't know, I pulled a track again that I had not listened to because I hadn't prepared for there to be a track. Listened to it a couple times. All I knew was when the 1.5 minute mark was and when the ending was.
okay.
And instead, moved a little bit closer to the cadets. I was painting at a military college and painted in the freezing rain. And one of those things that when you're going into it, you're like, all right, we're about to do this. But then by the end, and the energy that the cadets had, and like the adrenaline of painting in that kind of environment, has ended up being one of my favorite memories doing that painting. And I think, there's definitely challenges that don't turn into my favorite memories, but I learned something along the way.
How did you manage the freezing rain with the resources?
Yeah, you know what? The painting did not turn out as crisp
Okay.
as it could have been. It looks really great, like in the video and the footage. And actually, I was brought back out to that college several months later for a different fundraiser, and they had that painting there. And so the way that the rain had kind of bled the paint, it didn't look like my standard finished painting, but it kind of had a cool aspect to it and certainly had a story behind it.
That's beautiful. Yay! I really didn't anticipate that you would be put in a position where you're dealing with that kind of natural element. I didn't even think about the idea of like, oh yeah, she's gonna be outside. But I think it's amazing how you adapted. I mean,
Yeah,
clearly at that point you didn't really have a choice, but
right.
you went in there, you did the darn thing, and I think that's wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to know more about because obviously you're traveling all over the country. Like you said, you're going to be in 7 different states this month.
Hmm.
That's absolutely wild, and I really admire you. What does the business side of that look like? What does the business side look like in terms of how you plan and how you network and how you kind of advertise, for lack of better words? Not that you necessarily need to, but I'm curious about what that looks like on your end in terms of logistics and how you track all of that.
Well, this is where my dad's part of my genetics come into play.
Hey, yeah.
I am very type A. I am spreadsheet color coded. In fact, I let go of my first agent because I thought I could do everything better, which I have. So there's a lot of kind of analytics on the back end where I'm tracking what requests are out. Have I pitched people? Are we in conversation? Have they verbally accepted but not signed the contract? Like I'm sure that my spreadsheets would probably overwhelm some people and like very much satisfy others.
Mhm.
Um, but then there's a lot of bookkeeping involved too. Like we talked about the preparation process for a painting takes supplies in itself, but it's different when I'm traveling on a plane to places across the country, sometimes internationally. Um, I need to account for checking extra bags to take my easel, getting paint on site, a certain kind of car to be able to fit the canvases that I'm bringing. And so there's a lot of logistics that go into a painting performance that also have nothing to do with the painting itself.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of brain power, and eventually it's something that I would like to work to have an assistant or somebody that takes care of those things for me, and I can focus on some of the creative. But at this point, I just feel better doing it all myself.
I think that's fair. But also I think there's a lot to be said for obviously I know that what you said about like a little bit of your dad's genetics coming in, as well as some of your theater background and what you had to do within theater, helping that logistical skill set. Um, However, I think that in a majority of people's cases, we don't normally think about the arts and automatically think about, oh, logical skill.
Hmm.
I wonder if you can speak a little bit to your thoughts about how creativity has to go hand in hand with strategy and logic and analytical skill, especially when most people, we think creativity and we think fine arts, but what else really is there? That's kind of the point of this interview, too.
I'll answer this question with a story that will echo one of your earlier questions about some interesting situations I've been put in. I had the incredible opportunity to paint in Hawaii this year. And I want to check off all 50 states on my list, but Hawaii is a big one to check off.
The big one.
And so when I start planning for a trip where I'm traveling on a plane,
Yeah.
that involves locating a Home Depot and a Hobby Lobby or a Michael's
Yeah.
to pick up my supplies. Is at this point, again, that's where I feel comfortable. I like getting my own stuff. And those are my first two stops after I land at the airport. Hawaii does not have a Michael's or a Home Depot. In fact, to my knowledge, they don't really have a standard craft store that has the size canvas that I typically paint on. And so that's part of like the planning side of this, the analytical side. I have my blueprint for what I travel with. And in this case, I needed to make an adjustment on how to get a canvas there. And so what I did was I had a frame that I was able to decompose. I put it in a tube and I checked that tube as baggage. When I landed in Hawaii, and I was only there for like 36 hours. When I landed in Hawaii, I already had a voicemail on my phone from someone in Helena, Montana that said, we have your tube. Sometimes this happens. I was going to Honolulu, HNL, and my tube got sent to Helena, HLN, and they were going to try and reroute it to get to me the next day.
Nope.
And so I'm like, okay, I paint, I basically got in at night. I had one stop to go get my paint, and then I was going to need to figure out something to create a new canvas. And so what I ended up doing, this is where like the creativity comes in. I've walked the halls of Home Depot a million and a half times. I get like PVC pipe, some extra tape. I think I had the canvas, like the roll of canvas was with me. I just didn't have the frame.
Yeah.
And so I had to have a backup plan for what I was going to do, never having created a PVC frame before, all these things. It ended up that the frame was delivered to the convention center with an hour to spare before my performance. But that's the creative mindset of rather than be completely torn apart by the fact that one piece didn't show up as it was supposed to.
Yeah.
I kind of laughed at the universe. How could that possibly happen? But it did. Had some great chats with Delta customer service or whatever airline I was on, and figured out a way to make it work because that's just kind of how I've been wired is um, you pivot, you figure something else out. There's always a solution. It just may not be the one you planned on. And I think that that's where I've seen my creativity come into play, not on a canvas, but in this case, to make a canvas.
Yeah.
More times than one, when there's been different kinds of pinches that are out of my control, I figure out what I can do to get back on track.
I think that's a beautiful way to encompass the vague question that I asked you. That's
Long
really
story,
great.
but
No, truly, because adapt, pivot immediately, because you
exactly.
had to. And did you end up using what you had created as a backup, or did you go ahead and use what you had sent and was rerouted?
I ended up using the original canvas stretcher.
Okay.
It was tighter, it worked better, and I was like, you know what? The PVC frame is a good option for the future. I just wanted to test it in my home studio rather than in front of an audience.
I think that's appropriate. I think that's a valid ask. So you're professional. We know that. Work, we love a professional. How do you keep it fun? How do you keep the joy that you began with while using what you love as a business?
Hmm, that's a great question. Um, the performing aspect, like the live aspect, really refills my cup when I'm getting low, especially on months like this where there is a lot of the logistical work, there's a lot of back end work and like shorter time frames to do that.
Mhm.
Um, Leaning into the part where I do just get to have fun and paint and let the prep work carry me. Um, that every time I step on whatever version of a stage I'm on, it reminds me of how much I love doing this. Very, very rarely does a performance not satisfy that itch.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a push and pull of it being business and it being a creative outlet. And I've been trying to figure out more ways to paint for myself and not just paint for clients because I have not yet had an opportunity professionally where I just get to paint whatever I want.
Yeah.
And honestly, that would probably be really difficult for me. There's been one project lately that I have gotten to completely choose, and it took me a while to kind of settle on that one thing that I wanted to paint. It felt like a lot of pressure to do that. And so I think it's just an exercise in itself to be able to pull out my watercolors or like not a 5x4 canvas and just paint for me and paint for something that doesn't have to see the light of day on Instagram or TikTok and just let that be like truly expression rather than a product.
I think that's a great way. Could you go into some other techniques that you think might be good for anyone else who's also trying to find a way to separate creative business from creative works from within? Other
Mm,
ways to pour into our own cup as opposed to the one that we're paid for.
yeah. Well, for me, it's going into different forms of the arts that I enjoy. So I love being a patron of the theater. I have, I think, season tickets to all of the theaters that I can have in my city. So that really fills kind of our in between seasons, and I kind of always have a show that I can go to, which I love. Um, Weirdly, I have somehow stumbled into ballet. I am not a dancer in any way. I did take like a formal adult ballet class last season and was complete fish out of water. But within our ballet company, they pulled me in. I was in the Nutcracker last year as Drosselmeyer. So I was the fun aunt that had been on vacation, getting toys for her nieces and everything. So more of a character actor. Uh, and then going into next week, we're doing a production of Dracula, and I am Van Helsing. And so again, it's not a ballet role, it's a character role. I'm actually in stilettos for both because, of course.
Or
But it's been a really fun transition at 31 years old to all of a sudden be in ballet productions and back on stage in a traditional theater in a way that I never envisioned myself. And so, in those sporadic seasons where I get to be a part of the ballet or sitting in the theater, absorbing other people's performances, I think right now in this season, that is where I get a different kind of creative energy and don't require myself to get that from paint and canvas.
that is such a great way to kind of reset in a different kind of capacity.
Mhm.
Anytime I feel like stuck or in a routine that's beginning to kind of drain me or start to drag, I just tell myself I have to do something brand new that I don't do except like once a year. I have to do it right now. So I bought air dry clay. You went to a ballet class. I bought air dry
Yes.
clay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
The amount of little figures that I'm beginning to collect from myself on my own like desktop, it's just super fun. So I
Mhm.
completely agree that that's a beautiful way. What's been the most challenging way to consider yourself not a dancer whatsoever, but to kind of push yourself into that environment?
I mean, I truly did like jump head first. And when I did Nutcracker last year, it was a lot of strutting around, big gestures, really just like where I needed to be on the stage.
Mhm.
In Dracula, they're taking me to the next level, and I'm in a full fight scene. I'm Van Helsing, so I am the vampire killer. Um, and so when we learned the fight scene choreography last week, I mean, I'm doing jumps, spins, stabs. Like I did not know what I was literally walking into, and I am still sore from that one rehearsal.
Heck yeah. You're a dancing Buffy.
I guess so. Yeah, got
Icon.
another rehearsal tonight, so we'll see what they put me into.
Oh, exciting. I wish you luck. Don't pull anything. Stretch so good.
Yeah, we'll
It'll be
see.
wonderful. Well, I'm gonna circle us back to speed painting.
Yes.
Um, I want to know, obviously, you've kind of hinted at it and implied little details throughout this conversation, but I want to hear from your heart, why do you really love it? Like what sets your heart ablaze within speed painting?
I think what has drawn me to it over the years really is without knowing it when I started, it is the perfect blend of everything I'm good at.
Yeah.
It still challenges me. I find ways to challenge myself and improve my imagery, my technique, my performance. Um, But when I flip the canvas and I finish the painting, it is a physical representation of so many different pockets of hard work. And I am an introvert at my core, but I definitely crave like significance. And so, you know what? The applause definitely checks that box. And so to hear, feedback in different ways of how people received my art or my performance or my energy, is really rewarding, and again goes back to like the 80% that happens before I get there to make sure that it fits the event, fits the audience. The setup is clean and professional. All of my communication leading up to that with the team, like all of the different pieces that lead to that moment are then done, and it's all paid off. And so I don't know. I have a great time. I feel good about it. I feel accomplished and I am motivated to go to the next one. And I think as long as I have that feeling, this is a arena that I'll stay in.
Yeah. It's just something that makes you happy and
Yeah.
fills you with purpose.
Mhm.
Well, that's gorgeous. I know that if we take if we take everything that you just said and then we multiply it by maybe 1,000 and we make it about the arts as a whole, I would love to know why the arts have been important within your life, as you've hinted at, but we're gonna another opportunity to boast about the arts. And then even broader than that, why you believe they're so important to the world today.
When I first entered pageantry,
Hmm.
I just left a platform. And I was involved in a youth group at the time where we were educated about third world countries not having access to fresh water.
Yeah.
And so I spent several years as a teen raising money to build freshwater wells in Africa because people literally didn't have water to drink and survive. And then a couple years later, I was studying in an art education class in college, and I learned that a town just next door to the one that I was studying in didn't have art class in their elementary schools.
Mhm.
And that blew my mind because I have never not had access to the arts. And it's so hard to imagine what that's like because I've never lived a day without music or color or anything creative at my fingertips. And I'm so lucky that I had those resources in school and at home, and my parents fed those to me in huge amounts, right? And so it just didn't occur to me that there were places in our country and our world that didn't have a simple art class in kindergarten. And it harkened back to that freshwater well project because to me, a world without art is like a world without water. I mean, I truly believe that at some of the darkest parts of my life, had I not had arts, I would have ceased to exist. However you want to interpret that, it's probably correct. And the arts have been a way to express myself, um, to escape,
Mhm.
to connect with people, um, to step into shoes and cultures and lives that I would have never experienced had it not been through a story on stage. And I think that that has been one of the most beautiful parts of my upbringing is the color and joy and depth that the arts have brought me. And so starting in pageants with a platform about water, I felt like transitioning to a platform about the arts was just as important to facilitate more opportunities for communities and schools who didn't have innate arts education to have those experiences. Uh, and today, in a world where we are increasingly disconnected from each other, increasingly presented with um, different versions of information, AI generation, the arts are the truest way to connect, the truest way to express. And with what I do with a speed painting, I'd be hard pressed to see when an AI bot could recreate the moment, the live moment that I create with audiences across the country. And so I think that's what makes not just what I do, but the arts so special in themselves, is because it is really difficult to recreate that kind of human empathy and human creation. And I hope that we continue to see artists push and advocate for themselves and advocate for arts education opportunities for a long, long time, because we certainly have come a long way, but we have much further to go.
I completely agree. And yeah, the way that you express that means the world to me. I As the audience doesn't know, but as we both know, we initially connected because you were a beautiful role model to me in the way of being an arts advocate. And all of my work has just kind of hoped to model the same kind of effort that you put into that and the same kind of work and passion that you put into that. So thank you.
Mm.
But I was the kid who didn't have an art class in elementary school. I was the kid where middle school was so exciting because it was the first opportunity that I understood I might get to explore that in a classroom setting.
Mhm.
And it not being actively available to me nearby, but being available 20 minutes away is what influenced me to go 20 minutes a day, to go to middle school and go to high school. And while I'm very blessed that I was put in a privileged position to where I could afford to do that,
Mhm.
a majority aren't.
Mhm.
And a majority, especially within Oklahoma, are in a position where there's not an arts education, period.
Mhm.
Not a matter of 20 minutes, it's a matter of 30 or 45.
Mhm.
So I agree. And I really appreciate how you put that together.
Thank you. Yeah.
And those are all of the questions I have for you. Don't go yet.
Okay.
But thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing all of your energy and your knowledge with my audience.
Thank you so much. They're great questions.
Thanks.